Thank you all so much for being here today. I am so excited because we haven't done an in-person release for several years. So we were a little bit like, will people come? So thank you for coming. We also have people online. So thank you, the people online, for coming as well. This is the 2024 Kids Count in Colorado annual report release. And we're really excited that you all took some time today to be here. We have the Community Language Cooperative with us here today. We are doing some Spanish translation. And so I'm going to hand it over to you so that you can do a little introduction. And then we are also doing this online. So we have they're doing an introduction as well.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Daniel. I'm with the CLC, and your organization today made a commitment to language justice. What that means is that everybody's going to be able to speak in the language of their heart or the language that they feel most comfortable with. I'm going to be doing a simultaneous interpretation from English to Spanish and Spanish to English using these little receptors right here. So if you need interpretation, I'm going to be there in the back. Thank you again for having me and practicing language justice with us. Now I'm going to repeat everything in Spanish. Muy buenos días a todos, ¿cómo están? Mi nombre es Daniel Barrón con CLC. El día de hoy su organización está haciendo un compromiso con la justicia del lenguaje. Lo que significa esto es que todos van a poder hablar con el idioma de su corazón o el idioma en el cual se sientan más a gusto. Si ocupa mi servicio de interpretación, voy a estar en la parte de atrás. Otra vez, muchísimas gracias por tenerme aquí el día de hoy y practicar justicia del lenguaje con nosotros. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. In addition to having interpretation here today, I'm also really excited to share that we have translated Kids Count into Spanish. And so Spanish versions will be available later this week. So if you want one, let us know and we'll make sure you get that. Before I really get started, I also want to acknowledge that Dr. Roy is here from the Department of Early Childhood. Thank you so much for coming. It's always great to have our partners and friends in the room. And so we're excited that you're here and you're invested in hearing about all of our data. My name's Heather Tritton. I am the president and CEO here at the Colorado Children's Campaign. All of you probably know this, but the Children's Campaign is a nonprofit, nonpartisan policy and research organization, and we are focused on the well-being of children and families in our state. Oops, sorry. That's Riley. I'll talk about him in a minute. We've been serving the state since 1985, and we are proud champions of policies and programs that advance opportunities for kids throughout Colorado. We are a research and data-driven organization, which is why this Kids Count report is so important to us and why we're so glad that so many of you are here to hear about the data. So thank you all for joining us today. I am going to be
Voy a estar dando la mayor parte de la presentación aquí
to Riley Kitts, who is our Vice President of Strategy and Government Affairs. And he's going to talk a little bit about advocacy and what we can do with this data, both at the ballot box and at the legislature. I want to also thank the Colorado Health Foundation for letting us use this amazing room and their amazing technology so that people all over the state can be part of this Kids Count release. So big thanks, and thanks to Todd, who I think left for a meeting, but he helped us get everything set up and working today. That makes it really a lot easier. For people in the room, if you need the restrooms, they're sort of across the hall here, and there should be information about getting onto Wi-Fi on your tables. So like I said, we are excited that we are doing this both in person and on Zoom, and really we couldn't do it without, I'm just so impressed by the technology in this room, but the technology in this room is great. And as a kids-focused organization, we also always want to engage youth when we are doing our work. And so this year we partnered with the Youth Scan Project at Youth Roots to learn about what youth are saying about school climate, substance abuse, mental health, absenteeism, and gun violence. And the Youth Scan Project empowers thousands of youths across Colorado to share their point of view, deepen understanding, and help drive solutions. So you'll see input from their project throughout our report, and I think we have some quotes from kids in the actual physical report. And then finally, also want to thank Great Outdoors Colorado, who provide us a lot of photos of children in Colorado throughout our report and our presentation. And then finally, I want to thank the awesome staff at the Colorado Children's Campaign. Can you guys raise your hands? So a lot of work goes into Kids Count. This is my first Kids Count as CEO of the campaign, which is exciting. But that means that this is the first time I've seen how the sausage is made. And from our policy staff and research staff that are working on this sort of all year round, to our comm staff who do everything from like editing that to making it look so beautiful to making this today look so beautiful. There's a lot of work goes into putting all this together. So thank you to the staff. And I hope you guys looked at who raised their hands, because if you have questions later, they will be the people to ask questions too. So, all right. And then finally, we want to, of course, thank our funders. The 2024 Kids Count is made possible by the Annie E. Casey Foundation, the Ann Schutz Foundation, El Pomar Foundation, the J. and Rose Phillips Foundation of Colorado, and the Buell Foundation. So thank you, because obviously we couldn't do all of this work without you. The Children's Campaign has actually been doing Kids Count for just over 30 years now, and we hope that this continues to be a useful tool in the essential work that you all do to make our state a great place for kids. For those of you who are new to Kids Count work, how many of you is this your first Kids Count release? All right, lots of old timers here. That's exciting. Welcome, new people. Kids Count is the Kids Count is part of the Annie E. Casey National Kids Count Project. So we are the Colorado version. And the report tracks the child well-being at both the state and county levels. And you'll see at the back of your report that there are county level fact sheets for every county. And we look at the areas of family economic prosperity, child and family health, early childhood learning and development, and youth success in K-12 education. In a time when information is easy to access, but often harder to trust, Kids Count really does serve as an important source of quality, non-biased information on children and families for decision makers and child advocates. Every year, legislators and policymakers use Kids Count data to inform their bills and decisions. Nonprofits and community partners use the statewide data and local data to inform their work and fundraising, and the media has used the report quite a bit to inform their reporting and add more context to the issues that they're covering. So we hope that the information that you hear here today will support your work, and we thank you for your commitment ensuring every chance for every child in Colorado. Okay, so now onto the report. Did you all already take a sneak peek at the report? Okay, great. The 2024 Kids Count report shows that too many kids and families are struggling to navigate higher costs in Colorado. Oh, geez, sorry, this is not the computer I Okay. Okay, so what we're seeing is higher costs, especially with the expiration of so many pandemic era federal investments in social safety net programs. So that is a theme that I'm going to come back to over and over again, is the loss of these pandemic programs. The data show concerning trends in health coverage, the stability of our teaching and caring workforces, and housing insecurity. In other areas, such as disparities in academic outcomes and the share of kids living in deep poverty, our progress has stagnated. But it's not all bad news in our report. There is some good news. Colorado continues to take positive and impactful steps to support kids and families. Just in this last legislative session, the state adopted a more equitable school funding formula that we are very excited about, and passed deeply meaningful tax credits for families with low incomes and for care workers. So we are going to dive into the data and see what steps policymakers and voters can take this election and in the upcoming year to continue those positive steps for kids. So a few level setting points. If you already looked, you might have already seen this, but due to data collection and practices that lag, you'll see that a lot of the data in this report is from 2022. That is the most recent data available, and we work to regularly update and track data as it becomes available. So you can go to the Kids Count Data Center on our website and see if we have more recent data. So we keep that one updated. On another note, you may have seen in the report that there are some, and you'll see this in the presentation as well, there are some charts that have a gap in the data, and that gap is because of the COVID-19 pandemic. During the pandemic, the data that was collected by the census in 2020 did not meet their quality standards, and so they are not reported in our report either. As of 2022, Colorado was home to more than 1.25 million children. And whether these children live on the Eastern Plains, the Western Slope, or somewhere in between, each one of them deserves every opportunity to reach their full potential. So we all know that Colorado kids come from diverse backgrounds and they have a variety of experiences, strengths, challenges, needs. Among Colorado kids in 2022, more than 1 in 5 lived in an immigrant family, which means they had at least one parent who was born outside the United States. And approximately 1 in 6 lived in families that spoke a language other than English at home. And a quarter of the kids in our state were under age 5. As of 2022, the Front Range was home, this is not surprising, home to the largest share of Colorado children, with 85% of children in the state residing in the Front Range. However, most of the Front Range communities have also seen their child populations decline since 2020. There are only 2 counties where the child population increased between 2020 and 2022, and that's Douglas and Weld. As we put together this year's report, one of the clearest stories that emerged is that the end of policies that supported kids and families' well-being during the pandemic is affecting access to healthcare, food, housing, and other basics at a time when the cost of living in Colorado has increased significantly. We saw examples of this story across all of our issue areas, and especially in data on the economic security of Colorado families. Economic security is foundational to child well-being. But as prices for basic needs rise faster than incomes, and as pandemic era supports evaporated, too many Colorado kids are living in families who are struggling to make ends meet. A note that this is one of those gaps in our data, so you'll see this as I go through here. In 2022, 1 in 9 Colorado kids experienced poverty. Here, we define poverty by the federal government's definition, and that means that a family's in poverty if they have an annual income below about $28,000 for a family of 4. You can see that this is not significantly different between Colorado's pre-pandemic child poverty rate and our rate in 2022. And although the official poverty measure depicted here does not show a significant change in child poverty from 2021 to 2022, estimates that are calculated using a different, more holistic measure, the supplemental poverty measure, which accounts for impacts of programs like Medicaid and tax credits, show that the poverty rate for U.S. children more than doubled between 2021 and 2022. That sharp rise in poverty is largely due to the expiration of the child tax credit at the end of 2021. The expanded child tax credit lifted millions of U.S. kids out of poverty during the pandemic and helped families meet their basic needs. But Congress failed to renew it in 2021, thrusting many families back into poverty. This is just one example of how the expiration of policies designed to support kids' well-being during the pandemic has rolled back progress for families and children. I'm going to give you many more examples coming up. In addition, when you look at our indicators for economic security and well-being, we can really tell that the current measurements are not truly reflective and that Colorado families across several income brackets can be struggling. Again, the most recent federal poverty level for a family of 4 was just below $28,000. However, when you use an alternative and more holistic measure like the self-sufficiency standard, it reveals that a family of 4 in the metro area of Arapahoe County needs to make just under $110,000 or 4 times what the federal government says is the poverty line. So when we talk about child poverty in Colorado, it's vital that we look past our statewide poverty rate because it looks pretty good, right? Looking only at the statewide rate really masks the differences in economic opportunity that is available to families across the state. And although Colorado's child poverty rate sits well below the national average, some communities in our state have child poverty rates more than double the national average. In 2022, poverty rates in Colorado counties ranged from 2% in Douglas County to 35% in Castilla County in the San Luis Valley. Poverty affects children in all types of communities, rural, urban, and somewhere in between, but all 5 of the state's highest child poverty rates are rural communities, indicating a need for policies to support economic well-being of families in our rural counties in particular. That 35 is just a stunning number too, more than a third. Children who experience extreme poverty, so those are the children living in families whose income is less than half of the federal poverty level or living at about $14,000 per year for a family of four, face some of the steepest barriers to well-being. Colorado has made little progress toward reducing extreme poverty in the past decade, and as of 2022, 6% of Colorado kids, or approximately 66,000 children, experience this level of severe deprivation. The federal program, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, or TANF, is a program designed to support families experiencing extreme poverty, but its impact and reach has decreased since Congress drastically reshaped the program in 1996. So in 1993, TANF reduced extreme poverty rates among children by 38%. By 2019, the program cut extreme poverty rates among kids by only 4%. So the program is not working. The amount of cash assistance that TANF provides to families in Colorado is very modest. And while it can be helpful for some families, for most, it's not enough to end the cycles of poverty families find themselves in. As of July 2024, last month, the average monthly TANF cash assistance payment for a family with one parent and two children was $592. Payments at this level still leave families well below the poverty line, and they leave families far short of what it takes to meet basic needs for housing, food, and other common household expenses. Based on housing affordability standards, a family of three receiving a monthly TANF basic cash assistance payment in Colorado would only be able to afford a monthly rent payment of $178. Meanwhile, as you all probably know, the monthly fair market rent for a two-bedroom apartment in Colorado is more than $1,000 a month. So economic security is not the only area where the end of policies implemented during the pandemic has the potential to eliminate progress for families. So let's talk about healthcare. The gains made in connecting kids to health coverage are also at risk of reversal. The graph you see here shows positive trends in the uninsured rates for kids in Colorado and the US, again with that gap in 2020 due to the pandemic's impact on data collection. One important thing to take away from this graph is that over the longer term, Colorado has made historic progress at reducing our uninsured rate for children. It fell from 14% in 2008, significantly above the national average, to a record low of 4% in 2016. Another important takeaway from this one is that despite widespread job losses and economic turmoil between 2019 and 2021, Colorado did not see an increase in its uninsured rate for kids. This trend was largely driven by something called the continuous eligibility provision in Medicaid, implemented at the start of the pandemic. This provision helped people on Medicaid, including kids, keep their Medicaid coverage for the duration of the public health crisis. In Colorado, tens of thousands of kids were protected from losing their health coverage. The impact of the continuous eligibility provision on these families was significant. The uninsured rate for Colorado kids in poverty fell from 8% in 2019 to 5% in 2022. But despite its effectiveness, the continuous eligibility provision ended in the spring of 2023, another pandemic era ending, at which point states began redetermining who remained eligible for Medicaid coverage and disenrolling those who were no longer eligible or whose eligibility could not be determined. Tens of thousands of Colorado kids have either lost or are at risk of losing their health insurance coverage through this process known as the Medicaid unwind. Between June 2023, when Colorado began terminating Medicaid coverage, and February 2024, nearly 147,000 Colorado children were disenrolled from Medicaid, a decline of 24% from May 2023 enrollment levels. A portion of these children are likely still eligible for Medicaid based on their family's income, but were disenrolled for procedural reasons like administrative or paperwork issues. But nearly 150,000 kids disenrolled is just staggering. That's 1 in 9 kids in our state, not 1 in 9 kids on Medicaid, 1 in 9 kids in our state. And that means that there are kids who don't have insurance coverage right now, which greatly limits access to healthcare. Having limited access to health insurance and care means that those kids will be more likely to miss well child checks, dentist checkups, and life-saving vaccines. Colorado has taken some important steps to prevent children who still qualify for Medicaid from wrongly losing their coverage, but the state must do more to ensure Colorado kids have the health coverage and care they need. Without meaningful steps taken to address the Medicaid unwind, we fear that all the gains we have made in child health insurance coverage will be erased. Moving on to housing. Another area that has long been a challenge for Colorado families is the demand for affordable housing. Rising interest rates and increasing rents and home prices in recent years have intensified this struggle for many Colorado children and families. With affordable housing hard to come by, tens of thousands of Colorado kids lack a stable place to call home. The most recent count estimates that nearly 20,000 Colorado kids experienced homelessness during the 2022-23 school year. Data indicates that evictions, foreclosures, and inability to afford housing are responsible for an increased share of cases where children are experiencing homelessness. In the 2020-2021 school year, these factors were responsible for 26% of housing crises. By 2023-24, that number rose significantly, with evictions, foreclosures, and affordability being responsible for 39% of housing crises. Among those 20,000 kids experiencing homelessness, nearly 2% of Colorado infants and toddlers, more than 4,500 children from ages birth to 3, experienced homelessness in 2021-22. For older kids, the vast majority of Colorado students experiencing homelessness in the 22-23 school year were doubled up with another family due to economic hardship. Although being doubled up with another family may be less severe than being unsheltered, research still indicates that living in crowded housing is harmful to children's academic achievement, health, and behavior. Among families who are housed, housing costs often compromise so much of their household budget that they are forced to cut back on other basic needs like food, healthcare, and utilities in order to keep a roof over their heads. A family spending more than 30% of their income on housing is considered to have a high housing cost burden. In 2022, nearly 1 in 3 Colorado kids and more than 2 in 3 kids in low-income families lived in a household with a high housing cost burden. In 2022, the median value of owner-occupied housing units in Colorado was $531,100, up 31% in inflation-adjusted dollars from 2017. Meanwhile, median family income among Colorado households with children rose only 15% during the same time period. So one bright spot in our data this year, if you guys are feeling a little sad right now, one bright spot is a sharp decline in the share of Colorado kids living in food insecure households, or households that experience uncertainty about where they'll be able to find food, whether or not they'll be able to afford enough food. This decline happened during a time when the federal government temporarily expanded food assistance program like the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, formerly known as food stamps, to address hunger during the COVID-19 pandemic and economic downturn. However, similar to Medicaid continuous eligibility and the federal child tax credit, these pandemic era expansions expired in the spring of 2023, threatening to create a hunger cliff for families whose benefits dropped sharply at the same time that food prices were rising at historic rates. So we've covered how many beneficial policies from the pandemic that helped kids and families have expired or are expiring, and that is beginning to take a toll on Colorado kids and families. Another area that we, of course, know was greatly impacted by COVID was our public schools. Ever since many schools shut down and pivoted to remote learning at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, education advocates have wondered about the impact of the pandemic on student learning. And we need to be honest about student academic achievement in our state. Even before the pandemic, a large majority of Colorado students were not on track to be proficient in reading, math, or science. After dips during the pandemic, Colorado has started to see small increases in the share of students reading or doing math on grade level, but too many students are still left behind. And getting back to pre-pandemic levels of academic achievement should not be where we stop as education advocates. In 2023, 44% of Colorado students in grades 3 through 8 met or exceeded expectations in English language arts on the CMAS test, which is Colorado's statewide academic assessment. That's up from 43% the prior year. Math also saw an improvement up to 33% from 23% the year before. So you can see the state is making progress, but getting back to 2019 levels of only 46% of students meeting or exceeding expectations in English and only 35% of students being proficient in math should not be the levels we are shooting for. That still means that more than half of kids can't read at the level they should, and nearly 2/3 aren't reaching expectations in math. It's good we're seeing some improvements, but let's not let 2019 be the standard we should aim for. We must do better. And we must do better, especially for our students of color. Colorado also has some significant educational inequities, and many students of color who typically face the most obstacles to educational opportunity are less likely to meet grade level expectations than their white peers. The new state funding formula that we're very proud of, passed by the state legislature earlier this legislative session, is a strong starting point to ensure every child has the resources and support they need to be successful in school. That new formula will turn on next school year and will target funding to students living in poverty, English language learners, and students with special needs. We look forward to implementing that new formula and building upon its success in the years to come. High school graduation, of course, is an important milestone on the path to higher education or employment. So Colorado's on-time high school graduation rate, defined as the percentage of students graduating within 4 years, increased slightly in the 2022-2023 school year to 83% from 82% in the previous school year. Graduation rates increased for most student groups, but similar to academic achievement, significant gaps based on race, ethnicity, and family income persist. One thing is for certain, educators from early childhood to high school are critical to the success of Colorado's children. They are nurturing familiar faces who greet children at the door each and every day and who equip them with the knowledge and skills they'll need throughout their lives. Unfortunately, low wages and lack of investment in teachers, childcare educators, school mental health professionals, and others who work with kids and families take a toll on the workforce and on kids. Research shows that student-teacher relationships contribute to a positive school environment and can have long-lasting implications for both student academic and social development. However, more Colorado teachers are leaving their jobs in recent years. Between fall of 2022 and fall of 2023, 17% of teachers left their positions, up from 14% 3 years earlier. Although many factors contribute to a teacher's decision to leave their job, salary certainly plays a role. Colorado ranks 46th in the nation for starting teacher salary and 29th in the nation for average teacher salary. If we want better educational outcomes for our kids, we have to find a way to fairly compensate the people who are dedicating their careers to helping them learn. We have also struggled to fill positions for other professionals who help students on their educational journeys, such as school counselors, another place where we can see the impacts of the pandemic. As a result, too many Colorado students are attending schools where the student to counselor ratio is above the recommended level or where there is no counselor at the school at all. The American School Counselor Association recommends a school district have a student to counselor ratio of 250 to 1, which still seems really high. But in Colorado, nearly half of our 178 school districts did not meet that ratio. I don't want to be responsible for 250. That's why I'm here. Colorado's educator workforce shortage extends to childcare settings as well, as we know, where wages are even lower and benefits like health insurance are uncommon. In 2022, the median annual wages for a childcare educator in Colorado were just under $35,000. Only 54% of the median earnings for full-time year-round workers in Colorado, and much less than a kindergarten teacher earns. At the county level, wages ranged from less than $29,000 in Archuleta County to $41,000 in Eagle County. Among the 29 counties for which data were available, 13 counties had median wages for childcare educators that were below the self-sufficiency standard for a single adult, meaning they are not high enough for a childcare educator to be able to meet their basic needs for housing, food, or transportation. A 2024 survey conducted by the National Association for the Education of Young Children found that 37% of child care center directors and family child care home operators reported that their program was experiencing a staffing shortage. Young children rely on stable, consistent, nurturing relationships in order to learn and grow. These relationships are difficult to form if childcare programs cannot hire and retain staff due to low wages. If we want to ensure that every Colorado child gets off to a strong start in life, we must pay our childcare providers what they're worth. Another factor that is critical to student and youth success is a positive school climate, one where students feel valued and connected to their peers and educators. The state is working to track better data and improve school climate, but chronic absenteeism and harsh discipline policies point to challenges in too many Colorado schools. Being chronically absent from school, defined as missing more than 10% or more of the school year, impedes students' ability to learn. In Colorado, nearly a third of students were chronically absent, and in some districts, the chronic absentee rate was as high as 67%. Colorado must do more to promote welcoming school environments and remove barriers to attendance for all students. Similarly concerning, in the 22-23 school year, 8% of students received an out-of-school suspension, meaning they missed valuable learning time. Students of color are disproportionately likely to experience harsh disciplinary measures, and of students who received an out-of-school suspension, 63% were students of color, yet students of color make up only about half of the overall student population. And the last theme that we want to touch on today is the lack of access and affordability of childcare, and especially care for our youngest infants and toddlers. Families throughout Colorado are struggling with this, and several areas are experiencing childcare deserts, with some counties having no slots, 0 slots for infants and toddlers. Early childhood is also an area where the state has made some significant progress in the last few years, and we want to see that momentum continue. Initiated by a successful 2020 ballot measure that increased nicotine taxes to fund preschool, the Colorado Universal Preschool Program provides 15 hours a week of free preschool to all the young children in the year before kindergarten. Colorado 4-year-olds with certain risk factors can receive 30 hours of free preschool, and 3-year-olds with certain risk factors can receive 10 hours of free preschool. In its first year of the program, nearly 45,000 kids enrolled. That's about 60% of eligible children. Of those 45,000 kids, nearly 70% received a half-day programming or 15 hours of preschool a week covered by the state. But even as we're making progress with preschool, we must also recognize that Colorado still faces a severe shortage of childcare. In 2022, approximately 240,000 Colorado kids under 6 lived in families where all available parents were working. However, Colorado licensed childcare centers, family childcare homes, and preschools only had capacity to serve about 156,000 children, about 2/3 of children who are likely needing care. We also know that childcare shortages are especially acute for families with infants and toddlers who may face years-long wait lists for care if they can even afford it. The cost of childcare remains a significant barrier for so many Colorado families. In 2022, the average cost of childcare for an infant in a childcare center was $19,573 per year, nearly 16% of the median income of a married couple in our state, and nearly half the median income for a single parent. So while we have made progress for kids going into preschool and kindergarten, we still have so much work to do to ensure those gains last, and that we are not forgetting about the youngest babies and toddlers who are the most expensive to care for. So I've just given you a ton of data, and there's even more in the annual report, so I hope you all read it from cover to cover for you to digest. But what's next after seeing these trends? As advocates for improving child well-being, the Children's Campaign looks at this data, and we work with partners and policymakers, and a lot of you in this room, to identify levers for change. And this year's annual report gives us plenty to work on. So I'm now going to hand it over to Riley Kitts, our VP of Strategy and Government Affairs, and he's going to talk through some advocacy opportunities at both at the ballot box and at the state capitol.
Awesome. Thank you, Heather. Let's give it for Heather. That's a lot of data in a short amount of time. And as Heather said, my name is Riley Kitts, and I have the honor of going down to our state capitol and lobbying and advocating for policies and programs that benefit kids. There's a lot in here, and so we have a lot of work to do. So every year, our policy and research staff put this report together. They look at the data and trends, and then they work with you all and partners and other advocates to figure out what policies do we need to go pull at the state capitol to either stop these trends or continue the positivity. So we have a lot of work ahead of us. First off, we need to continue to address the effects of the pandemic and the policies that have expired for kids and families. That means expanding things like multi-year continuous eligibility for kids on Medicaid, so that if you're on Medicaid as a child, you don't lose coverage for a long period of time. It also means improving application and enrollment processes so that folks don't get disenrolled for silly reasons like paperwork or administrative issues. We need to make sure that all kids have health insurance coverage, and we cannot repeat the mistakes that we made with this unwind for the next crisis that hopefully doesn't come for a while, but we need to be prepared for. We also need to recognize that federal policies like the child tax credit have expired. And so other folks need to step up, like the state and locals, to provide better income support, help improve basic cash assistance, and make sure there is eviction intervention so we have less kids living on the streets. And while we did see some positive trends when it came to food insecurity, as Heather said, that program expires, right? The food security program, SNAP, the expanded benefits there, expired in 2023. And so while this data is a year or two behind, we expect in next year's report, we're going to start to see some negative trends when it comes to food insecurity. But Colorado has actually made some pretty significant steps there. Voters passed Healthy School Meals for All, which allows the universal meal program for our schools so kids can get breakfast and lunch. But that program right now is facing a budget shortfall. We need legislators to make sure that funding is sustained, that that budget is made whole, and that all kids still receive healthy meals in their schools. So then, speaking of students, we need to deliver better funds and resources to our students who are struggling, especially those who are living in poverty, who are learning English as a second language or third or fourth language, and kids who have special needs. As Heather said, we were really proud to work with the legislature last year to pass the new school funding formula. That's going to put more than $500 million into our schools and target it towards those kids living in poverty or who are learning English or who are, have special needs. But that needs to turn on still. It doesn't kick on until next school year, and it's going to take 6 years to implement. So over the next 7 years, we got to make sure that that turns on the right way and those funds are actually getting to those students. And we can't just stop there with students, right? We need to better support our teachers, school counselors, and care workers. And because of our budget woes in this state, too often we are passing tax credits or smaller investments, which are important, but they're often underfunded or expire. So we need to make sure that those investments are sustained, that they stay on the books, but we got to find longer term sustained revenue to make sure that we are supporting our teachers, care workers, and school counselors. And then, especially important for the Children's Campaign, you have a gigantic data book in front of you. We need better data. We need to find out better how our kids and families are doing in the programs and policies that we're passing. We need to do better to make sure that our early childhood investments are actually making it to the families and kids. Same with our K-12 and medical investments. We need to make sure that those are actually getting there. As you'll see through the report, we have data gaps. We have places where data is not yet available, and the Children's Campaign is going to be pushing our state agencies and policymakers to make sure we have clear, accurate data so that parents are informed, policymakers are informed, and the public is informed. And last, but certainly not least, we cannot take Colorado backwards with harmful ballot measures that are going to be on the ballot this November. So this isn't intended to be like a campaign, a vote no speech, but we did think we'd be really remiss if we didn't give everyone the full context, especially given some recent political developments. So this upcoming November, voters may vote on 2 ballot measures that would dramatically impact our state budgets and local budgets in Colorado. First off, Initiative 50 would put harmful tax policy into our state constitution by capping local growth and the revenue that's available there. And Initiative 108 would also cut property tax rates and then require the state government to reimburse local governments for any lost revenue. Estimates from nonpartisan staff have estimated that this is going to be billions of dollars cut from state and local governments. And that means that any program that depends on general fund, whether it's our public school funding formula, some of our early childhood investments, even our Medicaid program, we're going to start to see budget cuts and a lot of programs cut if these two ballot measures pass. The devastation that these will have in our state and local budgets cannot be overstated. So that's why we're really encouraged, though, speaking of recent political developments, that the governor, Polis, he called a special session to start next week for legislators. So he's bringing all legislators back to the Capitol to try to find a compromise and get these two ballot measures off the ballot. The policy framework put on the table right now puts a path forward for the state that will allow vital programs and budgets to be protected, and it will ensure that that new funding formula for public education actually turns on. If these measures don't pass, if these measures pass, we are going to see that formula not turn on. We're going to see budget cuts. We're going to see teacher salaries slashed. So the Children's Campaign is really encouraging legislators to work with opponents of these measures and the governor's office to come up with a narrow compromise that'll get these 2 days off the ballot. We believe the policy framework put forward, while it will mean a little bit tighter of a budget, doesn't mean billions and billions of dollars cut from K-12 education. So we encourage you to let your legislators know that this is that you support a deal, you support getting these things hopefully off the ballot. We understand that affordability needs to be addressed throughout the state of Colorado. We've gone through a lot of that today. Property tax might be part of that solution, but the ballot measures currently on our docket are not the solution for Colorado. We have a QR code there that you can scan for more information. In the back, we have this scary for the Children's Campaign looking document that explains, we did the thought exercise of going through the state agencies and thinking about what could be on the table here. And it's a lot of programs that we all rely on. And last, for our election season, we do have, some things coming up this November. Hopefully these two measures are not on your ballot. We have a whole host of things on the docket for November, from a new president. There will be other ballot measures on the ballot. You have state and local candidates up for re-election up and down the ballot. And so every year we want to make sure that voters, candidates, elected officials are well informed and have the resources they need both to be able to register and vote, engage in the civic process, and know what issues are affecting kids and families. So we're proud to release every year Campaign for Kids. We're really proud to be partnering with Mile High United Way and are glad to have their support of the work this year. But we'll be launching our website after Labor Day and sending out resources. Like I said, information on how to register to vote, who your elected official is, and then we're going to have a lot of these county by county breakdowns. So if you're ever talking to your elected official, you can say, you know what, I actually know what the early childhood data is in my district. I actually know what the graduation rate is in my district. Do you? Let's make sure, right? Let's have a dialogue here. That's really what it's intended to be about. So we hope that you all engage with this. And once again, we hope you all engage with your legislators and vote this upcoming November. Thank you very much for the time today. I'm going to hand it back over to Heather to close us out.
All right. I get to do the sign up for all things. I hope everyone has their phones out still because we have lots of QR codes. So please sign up for Kids Flash if you don't get it already. That is our newsletter. We also send out information about webinars and other things that we're doing. So please take a minute, scan that code, sign up. And then again, I mentioned this earlier, but we do have the Kids Count Data Center on our website, and we would love it if you want to check that out. That hub has data and trends on child well-being across the nation, the state, and local communities. And our staff works to update that throughout the year. And also if you get on that and you have questions or you need help with it, please let us know. We're happy to help walk you through it. And then please scan this QR code. We are in about 3 weeks from tomorrow, I think, 3 weeks from today. I don't know. September 12th. Please join us at our annual Connection Reception. It is September 12th, 4 p.m. at the Grand Hyatt. A lovely event where you can have delicious food and chit chat with your friends and join us to celebrate some amazing advocates and legislators who've done great work for kids this year. And then finally, just again, thank you so much for joining us. This is a list of all of our policy comms staff so that if you have questions, please, you can reach out to them. If you're in the room, can you guys just raise your hands again? Feel free to ask any of these people questions. Yeah, give them a big hand. And then be on the lookout. We will do some future webinars when we get closer to the legislative session, and we have all of our priorities set. So thank you again for being here. We all know that Colorado is a great state, but it's also clear that we have a whole lot of work to do. And we really do want to make Colorado the best state to be a kid. And so let's continue working forward, moving forward. And thank you all again for being here, and have a great day.